Hi everyone, I'm Nabil Hannan, Field CISO at NetSPI, and this is Agent of Influence. Today we're with Don Armstrong, who joins us to talk about third-party risk and risk management and the importance of overall IT hygiene. So Don, really excited to have you with us today.
Thanks, Nabil. It's great to be here.
Don, maybe we can start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself and where you are professionally today.
Sure. Well, I'm currently the Vice President of IT Operations at Human Good. IT Operations meaning I cover cybersecurity, of course, community and corporate IT and infrastructure. And before that, I was at Virgin Hyperloop, where I was for about 4.5 years. And that was a really, really exciting part of my career because being at a startup, you really have to be on top of change. You have to really want change and be able to embrace it. And I think, frankly, that really prepared me for, I think, what we're seeing now, in the world of AI and how fast we're moving now. But frankly, being there really gave me a lot of experience in cybersecurity in general because we had to worry about intellectual property, theft, as well as protecting the tube and the track side and a lot of industrial IoT devices. So it was good times.
So we talk a lot, and we've talked on multiple episodes around truly the business context and the business profile that often impacts how security decisions are made. Would love to understand from you, how is cybersecurity and the focus on cybersecurity different for the nonprofit sector versus other sectors?
Well, I guess I can really only speak for Human Good and what I've seen from a variety of acquisitions and mergers that we've done. But what I typically see is large tech debt. And, in senior living, you are more focused on caregiving and your residents and healthcare, and there's such thin profit margins there, I think, or maybe it's a nonprofit, so you're kind of scraping by with every dime. That really cybersecurity is not really a consideration, right? And I think that industry has not ever thought that they were an interesting target. But I think now we see that everything is an interesting target, right? Everything is a target, generally speaking. So obviously the unique challenges are, a lack of technological maturity, I would say, as well as financial availability. I'm really, really lucky, though, because I work for an organization where the CEO, John Cochran, is all about innovation in that industry. And I think as the global population and the American population ages, right, those people that are going into affordable housing communities and retirement homes, they expect more because they're streaming at home. They have their Facebook accounts, they have iPads and smartphones, and they expect all of the things that they had at their home, right? So they don't want to lose any of that technological ability that they had, right? And then we're also seeing that adding that tech, generally speaking, to the senior living industry allows for better profit margins, especially after COVID. It's very difficult to get healthcare workers. So when we struggle with that, you pay more for contractors. So you're further putting pressure from a financial perspective.
Going back to what you mentioned around, the nonprofit sector may have felt that were not meaningful targets because they are nonprofit and there may not be money there. I often wonder if that's a false sense of security that these organizations have fallen into, because they may not have as much money, but because they're not focusing as much on security, they're easier targets to get, even if it might be less from a value perspective.
100%.
They're easier to go after. So is that a false sense of security that they have because they don't think they would be targeted, or is it just that there isn't enough from a funding and budgeting perspective to actually be able to focus on this?
Well, there's always money somewhere, right? I mean, let's face it, there's always money somewhere. So I think that they thought that they had that type of immunity, but that immunity doesn't exist anymore because, you know, we have seen ransomware attacks on nonprofit hospitals. Well, they were able to get their ERs up and running again by paying the ransom. You know, what are you going to do from from a retirement community if you have residents in your care? So you have memory care, you have assisted living, you have skilled nursing, you have the entire range of caregiving, and you need technology to make that happen. We have alerting, fall detection, all of that. And so if that's not available, then you're putting your residents at risk.
Now, I know you're very passionate about third-party risk. I'm very curious to understand, what role does third-party risk play in your world today when it comes to the cybersecurity front?
Well, it's not that I'm passionate about it. I think I'm more terrified about it.
That's one way of putting it, I guess.
Yeah, you know, the only breaches that I have had in my entire career, knock on wood, is third-party breaches. And some of them have been kind of ancillary, you know, breaches where they only really affect maybe our entire population of users, and so they have to be notified. But in other cases, those third-party breaches may be where a very small company that's maybe providing physical therapy to one community has not secured their server, their computer that basically runs their whole business, and that allows that virus to get into our systems. So depending on the third parties that you're using, your risk could be, you know, this much or that much. So this year I was able to flesh out our security stack, and I added a third-party risk company so that, you know, we could analyze as we bring in new contractors, as we bring in new companies, what is our risk, right? And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not really seeing a whole big benefit to that, because a lot of the companies that we deal with are either government related or very small or pretty small, so they're not in there. And we also get a lot of pressure from a security auditing perspective, right? Because, you know, if you want to do security audits on everybody that's coming on board, but when you have 125 communities, there's obviously that pressure that, you know, I don't have time for your audit. I need to bring these people on board right away. And it's challenging. So am I passionate and terrified about third-party risk? Absolutely. I don't think that there's much that you can do about it except be super vigilant.
Are you changing the approach, or have you drastically changed your approach over time on how to manage third-party risk better?
Well, one of the ways that I'm managing it in-house is, well, from a marketing and sales perspective. So in IT, I have to be marketing and sales a lot. And, you know, I have to get out there and inform and help out the understanding of why that security audit's important. Why is it important for you to tell me that you're bringing on this vendor? And that education is I think an important first step, because they just think they're solving their problem, which they are, but you're bringing a problem to me instead. And then making sure that my house is in order, so that I can just worry about the third party risk without worrying too much about my house, right? So as long as we're secure and we have a great stack and great IT hygiene, then I can at least focus more on that third party risk.
So IT hygiene, we understand, is a problem across the industry today because of how challenging that problem is as a whole. Would love to understand from you, how
Well,
do
you
you
could you
how do you
could
determine how do you determine where to focus your effort when
yeah.
it comes to IT hygiene, and of course, why it's so critical. You touched on it a little bit, that if you can at least have good hygiene yourself, you can focus somewhere else. But what are some other benefits that you get from making sure that you're doing the basics and that your IT hygiene is up to par with what you're expecting it to be?
Yes. Well, it's all really about setting expectations with my team, right? So they have to be trained and educated that this is why IT hygiene is important. So that is all the way from documentation, all the way to practicing best practices, securing your servers, hardening, labeling things, asset management. All of those nitty gritty details are important. There was I've been at the Human Good for just over 2 years, and about a year ago we were having a meeting with a bunch of the IT guys, and one of them said, "Yes, well, we need to do better IT hygiene," and I was like, "What?" I was so excited that they're actually using my words, so that I knew we turned a corner there.
I mean, I think it's fun and also exciting to see the cultural change happen, especially when they adopt not only your a proper thought process and the appropriate thought process, but also same language, maybe, that you're
Yes.
speaking about the same
Yeah,
concept.
that's when I knew that they got it.
So, which directly leads into what I want to talk to you more about, is around culture for cybersecurity as well. I think if you don't have the right culture, you can do as much from a technology perspective and automation perspective and testing perspective, etc. But without the right culture, you're not really going to have successful cybersecurity program. So with things coming up like Cybersecurity Awareness Month is in October, what are some things you're doing to bring awareness around cybersecurity within your organization?
Well, I always say to the board and leadership that Cybersecurity Awareness Month is my favorite holiday. And we do a big thing for our team members, but we also do a big do a big rollout for our residents as well. So for our team members during the year, we do your traditional IT things. We make them do we do phishing tests, we do training videos, but so inundating them with more of that during Cybersecurity Awareness Month is not really going to interest them, right? So what I've done over the years is I make sure I bring in one or two 3-letter agencies to do a talk. Everybody wants to hear from the FBI or whoever I can get in the door, right? And I also try to gamify a lot of things. Everybody wants a $5 Starbucks gift card. So that just, the more you talk about it, the more awareness you raise, the more that they start to talk about it within their communities and frankly within their entire lives, right? Because everybody needs to have that education because it affects all of us all the time, frankly. And so that's pretty much what we do from a team member perspective. We do some internet articles and things like that, but it's really, I think, the gamification and the fun talks that we do during that time, keeping it real and funny.
So a common challenge, and I shared one of my stories with you about my mom, who had an incident with her accounts getting hacked and scammers reaching out to her contacts on Facebook, etc. When it comes to the residents at these senior living facilities, what are some approaches you've seen that tend to be the most effective? And are there certain things we're not thinking about that we should be thinking about, not just to better educate the senior, but also better educate everybody, the general population across the board?
Yes. Well, we have 23 IT admins across the country that service all of our communities. And we do monthly workshops for the residents. And there's always a cybersecurity component to that. We try not to make it overwhelming, right? So those workshops are really for them to bring in their devices, ask questions. Maybe they need the device updated or whatever needs to be done. We try to help them out with that. But also, we also try to impart, like, one piece of information for the month. Here's the tip of the month. As we roll through to October, we do something very similar with them in October. So me and my two security engineers will go out to the communities. We'll do talks. We also try to bring in the three-letter agency for them as well. The residents always like to hear from them. Tell them some war stories, right? Because and frankly, if you listen to what they're telling you, right, then everybody in that room is hearing their story and learning from that story. So I think that outreach, that education, and normalizing it is very important. I think the FBI statistics really, really show, and I might get some of these numbers wrong, but it's something like 80% of all elder fraud is reported if it was not successful. So they're basically, I didn't fall for it, so I'm going to tell you about it. But on the other hand, if they don't tell you about it if it was successful, and often they won't tell anyone about it for months and months and months. They don't want to be seen as not being able to handle their own affairs. They don't want to be seen as in cognitive decline or be embarrassed, frankly. I think everybody in this room, everybody out there listening to this, probably has at least one story from a family member that we can all relate to. It's really all about education and talking about it all the time. We have to talk about it all the time.
There is a real stigma. People feel like they're vulnerable, and it's sharing the story of when they got taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
It makes them feel more vulnerable versus them thinking that, hey, maybe I can save someone to not fall for the same issue that I did. And it's fascinating how creative these scams and attacks are getting today to truly compromise, especially the elderly.
Oh, definitely. And I always start off my talks when I'm giving them to the residents with a vulnerable story, right? That's a very good point, Nabil, is that I put it out there, something that happened to me, and then that immediately puts them at ease that I'm not going to judge them.
Lets the guard down a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The elder fraud statistics are absolutely insane. I think in 2022 it was something like $3 billion estimated, and a large percentage of that is from the U.S.
Yeah. I mean, it's also understandable because the elderly in the U.S. have more probably access to technology than other countries.
They can Zelle and Venmo that money off. Yep.
Absolutely. Would love to talk more about understanding your involvement with women in cybersecurity. Can you share with us what you do there today?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the organization you're speaking of is WICIS, WICYS, and that's a nonprofit organization that started about 11 years ago, and its focus is really on moving women forward, whether that's from an entry-level position in cybersecurity or middle management all the way to leadership. They have mentorship programs for all levels of leadership. They have scholarship programs for SANS and ISC2. It's just really a great organization for women to get involved. All types of different programs. So in their conference in Tennessee earlier this year, I actually did a talk on gender bias. And that talk involved how to gender wash your resume, because bias is out there, whether that bias in hiring is conscious or unconscious, right? How do you make your resume not look like you're a female? And the fact that we have to do that is a shame, but it's a fact. In my research that I was doing for this talk, I found out that most candidate automation platforms use a program called BERT, and BERT, and what And that basically, sifts through the candidates and goes off of keywords and things like that. And there was a study done, and that study showed that BERT was 61.8% more likely to choose a male resume, even if the resumes were exact. Like, that's crazy.
And I think that goes to some of the discussions we're having today around, systems that get trained on data. So the system could potentially be using machine learning or AI to help make decisions. And that's when you also have the problem where just because it's automation doesn't mean it's not biased, because the training data often leads to output behavior in these types of systems, and that causes problems.
Exactly.
So
yeah, we were having some conversations earlier with a couple CISOs, and we were talking about how these LLMs are basically trained on Reddit, and who participates in Reddit mostly. 19-year-old straight white guys. Yeah, so that's what we're going off of.
yeah, and that's a big challenge we're dealing with and trying to address. And obviously, it's not going to happen or get solved overnight,
No.
but it's a work in progress. So to kind of elaborate a little bit on the women in cybersecurity piece, what advice do you have for people who want to get involved, and what do you recommend they do?
Yeah, well, if you're a corporation and you want to sponsor, you can just go to the WeSys site and sign up. Allies as well for mentors is great. I've been a mentor there for several years. Frankly, I usually learn just as much as I impart, so that's an awesome part of it. And frankly, what I thought was really fascinating about this last WeSys, I spent a lot of time in the business booth area, and the amount of hiring that was being done by companies, I thought was what a fantastic idea for a company that's trying to hire. And cybersecurity people are hard to find, and what an amazing opportunity for them to be able to hire bright young women.
I do want to go back because it really piqued my interest. Your talk that you did there about the types of things to do to stand out during the recruiting process, or not get set aside during the recruiting process just because you're a woman in cyber. Were there any other key takeaways or themes during that presentation that you found really resonated with the audience? And would you mind sharing a little bit about what those were?
Sure. Well, if you're having trouble getting hired, one of the things that a lot of women are doing is taking their photo off of LinkedIn and changing. If you have a name that's Chris, that's okay. That could go either way. But if your name is Crystal, you might want to just put a K there. So that's one way to kind of gender wash so that they can't really tell if you're male or female. Also, from a language perspective, so men tend to use more agentic language, right? So very strong, confident words.
More active
Yes.
in nature.
Yeah, use more I words. And women will use more communal language. So we, team. I'm part of a team. So changing your resume to be more agentic is also very important. Yeah, those are two of the big takeaways. To be honest, even though I did that presentation, I was still shocked at the amount of women who have been a victim of terrible bias in all areas of their careers. I've had it happen to me, but I'm not 21 anymore, and to see like 20-year-olds having these problems happen, I was just shocked that we haven't come as far as I thought we did.
In the recruiting front too, I think there's a huge problem today around how job descriptions are made as well, because I find it that often job descriptions have requirements that are maybe unattainable or maybe not quite required for you to be successful in that particular role. But what often happens, I think, is women, when they see a requirement that they don't meet all the criteria, they don't apply for certain roles, whereas men often don't look for that 100% completeness from a requirements perspective before applying.
Yeah, and that's one of the slides that was in my presentation, and that's pretty much the first thing I tell women is that a man will apply if they hit 10% of the requirements. A woman won't apply unless she hits 85-90%. Just apply. Because frankly, I've been a hiring manager for a very long time, and HR makes me write those job descriptions, and I'm usually just copy pasting. So
I'm also wondering the different mindset between men and women when it comes to whether they meet a certain criteria or not. Do you think there are some other cultural or childhood behavior that kind of predispose us to those biases on making a decision on whether we apply for something or not?
Well, that's a deep question. I have absolutely no doubt. I mean, when women, they go to home ec class, guys go to shop. I think that's different now, or at least I hope that's different now in schools. But I had to take home ec. I really wanted to be in that shop class, but I couldn't take it. I wasn't allowed. And I was forced to take home ec. Why do I want to take home ec? Come on. Yeah, I mean, women from STEM, like, you're talking about science, technology, engineering, and math. I think young girls tend to be a little bit discouraged. Maybe they're not as fast learners as the boys are. It's there.
I also think from a childhood perspective, boys are encouraged to do things that are a little bit more inherently riskier than girls are. Like if a young boy goes and plays outside and nicks his knee and comes home and cries about it, it's like, oh, he's a boy, he's just doing something like that. Whereas girls are encouraged not to go around and be rough and cut themselves and get in trouble. That's often still, I think, majority of the population kind of treats it that way.
Yeah.
And same, your home ec class and shop class kind of made me think about that too, because if you think about it in a way, the boys then got pre-exposed to tools and things that we're doing in that class that were inherently a lot more risky than home ec class. And that right away kind of builds a divide between the mindset of the two genders.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess I really wish we had come farther, but I don't think we have.
I didn't mean to get too deep, but I think it's a reasonable discussion, and I loved your perspective, so that's really helpful. But Don, thank you so much for being here. This was truly a pleasure and great learning from you, and look forward to many more.
Thanks, Nabil. It was great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today. You can find more episodes on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as at netspi.com/agent of influence. If you want to be a guest or want to recommend someone, then please reach out to us at podcast@netspi.com. And as always, stay proactive, my friends.